Hello, thank you so much for joining us today for our next summer episode of Tide 10. Tide, also known as the Investment Diversity Exchange, which connects movers and shakers to promote diversity and inclusion across investments and asset classes, and is aimed at highlighting a diverse set of industry professionals, their firms, and their important contributions to society. I'm Priscilla Guevara, Head of Capital Formation and Investor Relations of Science at Los Angeles-based startup studio and early stage venture fund. We identify and invest in early stage technology, disrupting large industries and driving change across consumer behaviors. With early success incubating and exiting Dollar Shave Club to Unilever, we leverage our strengths as successful investors and entrepreneurs. We see around corners, source strong talent, and invest at highly advantaged pricing. With me today, I'm super excited to be joined alongside Megan Ruan, a woman who, within a few minutes of meeting a few weeks back, realized we have so many synergies and mutual connections. Hi, Megan. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm well. Thank you so much for having me, Priscilla.
So good to see you. And where in the world are you today?
I am in Arden Hills, Minnesota, home with my family. I'm usually based in New York, but I just found that this is a little bit more comfortable for quarantine.
Way more comfortable, as everyone is escaping the metropolitan city. So you made the right choice. But so from Ivy League to Morgan Stanley to family offices and infinity groups, perhaps we can start by giving the audience a little bit of background on you.
Happy to. I think you hit on some of the high points. So as I said, I'm from the Midwest, but I went to college on the East Coast and ended up moving to New York after I graduated. Spent the first couple of years of my career at Morgan Stanley working in wealth management, and was fortunate enough to be part of a group that dealt exclusively with family offices and high net worth clients, which was a world I knew nothing about.
Yeah.
And then very luckily was brought to the Johnson Company, which is the family office for the Johnson & Johnson family, as a member of the investment team. So I've spent the last about 18 months as an investor there, working across a variety of asset classes, investing across sectors and industries. And it's just taught me so much about the world of investment management.
Yeah, I can imagine. And so, today we'll dive into diversity at the fund manager level, how the Asian American and Pacific Island community is connecting with diverse founders and the impact that is being made to society. And so I love your background with the Johnson Company, and obviously that's near and dear to our hearts, quite close to it. But in this new virtual reality, right, how are you guys performing due diligence on managers, and how are you meeting?
I feel like that's the kind of quintessential quarantine question.
Yes.
I think in a lot of ways, the investment due diligence side of things has actually stayed very similar. A lot of LPs, I feel, are realizing that much of their team interactions, a lot of the interactions with external partners can still be done very effectively via virtual. I think where it gets a little trickier is on the operational due diligence side. So, we can no longer walk into a manager's office and speak to them across our conference room. But one thing that's actually been interesting has been fund managers offering to do virtual office tours. So rather than actually visiting them, they'll walk us through their office via Zoom or via FaceTime, and we can actually still see, where they sit each day, where they would be interacting with their team and with founders, and it gives you a sense. It's not perfect, but it gives you a sense. And I think where we're filling in gaps and kind of putting the pieces together a little bit more so is by supplementing with more reference checks than we may usually have done in the past.
That's super important. And, as we shift into this kind of new virtual reality, right, and post-pandemic, how are you thinking views will change towards underwriting managers?
It's a really good question. I think that COVID and the shift toward virtual has accelerated and maybe accentuated some views towards underwriting that we held before, but now think are even more. The first would be probably, the ability for a manager to add true operational value to their portfolio companies. So this can take a lot of different shapes and forms, but, it could be helping improve supply chain. It could be bringing in the right talent and making sure the talent is retained. If it's an earlier stage company, it could be, the GP helping the company sign a major client. But what it really means to us is going beyond having this large network and differentiated deal sourcing pipeline,
Mm-hmm.
we're looking for a little bit deeper involvement. And then secondly, I think we are prioritizing our ability to build stronger, deeper relationships with our fund managers. And
Mm-hmm.
reason being, I think a lot of these trends towards virtual interaction are here to stay. And
Sure.
much as, those interactions are very effective, they also take time to build and to maintain. So our
Mm-hmm.
is to have fewer manager relationships, and make sure that they're ones that we have high conviction in and can actually get to know.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you're thinking about evaluating managers, what are some of the important criteria pieces that you would lay out, especially from a diversity perspective?
Definitely. From the diversity perspective, team background is key.
Mm-hmm.
There have been just so many studies that prove diversity is beneficial to decision making, to profitability, to talent retention, and yet it is something that is so rarely put into practice in full effect. Um,
Sure.
so, from our perspective, we like to see managers take diversity into account not only when they're making investments, but also when they're building their own teams.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard this discussed in so many different ways, but one of my favorite metaphors is that diversity should be an ingredient that is baked into the dish and not just a condiment that is, last minute. And
Yeah,
I
I
find
love
it so
that.
true. I think oftentimes, it's an afterthought. And
Mm-hmm.
what gives me hope is that I'm seeing more and more that asset allocators are starting to identify this and question this more. So as
Mm-hmm.
a manager, you can't really get away with having token representation anymore. Diversity really needs to be kind of a core piece to how you run your business.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And when you think about your role, I know we spoke about this. You have a side affiliation with Gold House and Gold Rush, which I find super fascinating. And I would love for you to dive in a bit more as to what Gold Rush is and how it's helping to build a more equitable ecosystem for diverse founders.
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked. I'm happy
Yeah.
to share what I do in my capacity as a volunteer, especially as it relates to promoting diverse entrepreneurs. So Gold Rush is an accelerator for the most promising Asian-led companies in consumer-facing areas. And it's a venture that we launched about a year ago under the umbrella of Gold House, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering Asians in society. So
Mm-hmm.
the goal of Gold Rush, the accelerator, is to help level the playing field for a demographic of founders that, structurally just doesn't receive the same amount of funding and media attention.
Sure.
So we work with our founders by putting them through this 12-week program that offers networking, educational programming, as well as media and brand promotion. And we also pair them with one-on-one advisor, mentor, mentee relationships with different industry leaders and investors.
That's amazing. And so how have you seen the impact to date?
So we're very excited that so far we've been able to work with 2 cohorts of founders. We're about to have our 3rd this fall.
Oh, congrats.
On impacting them from 3 different angles. The first is amplifying their brand. The second is accelerating their core business. And then lastly, we want to help them build a really unique founder community. So from the first piece of it, amplification, we do a lot of work promoting founders through both owned and earned media, and we host a biannual Gold Rush sale. It's an online flash sale where our founders are able to acquire new customers. Some of them sell out of their inventory entirely.
Wow.
It's just a really exciting time for them to earn some top line growth. So that's the first piece of it. And then secondly, in terms of accelerating their core business, we do this through our educational programming as well as through our advisor matching. And so this has helped founders not only institutionalize their businesses, oftentimes they're very early stage, but also meet investors. And we've had founders close financing rounds through intros that have been made through Gold Rush. And then
Incredible.
the piece of it is community building. So our ultimate goal with Gold Rush has always been, let's build a platform for diverse founders to find each other and also to co-elevate each other. And our hope is that this lessens the burden of being a founder, being an entrepreneur in a space that often was not created for you.
Yeah, I mean, we think about that a lot at Science, and how we connect the dots for a lot of these founders who just don't have that opportunity. But one of the things that, that really resonates with me about your background is the intersection of your investment background and also the nonprofit and philanthropic areas. I personally am very fascinated about that, and it's near and dear to my heart as well. So I would love for you to kind of walk me through how your worlds are colliding and why that's important to you.
Absolutely. It's funny, it almost felt like it happened by happy accident. These two things ended up being so synergistic. So, from an investment perspective at the Johnson Company, everything that I do at Gold Rush is accretive. It's helped me network, meet tons and tons of entrepreneurs and other investors, particularly VCs that help us in our own due diligence process and also in improving the quality of our own portfolio. From a Gold Rush perspective, the nonprofit work is helped by my experience as an investor because I know what a lot of other investors are looking for when they're evaluating companies. So that helps me build a program that's more relevant for our founders. But at the end of the day, I think that these two things are kind of two sides of the same coin. Building companies and investing, you can't have a successful company without the great ideas and the founders, and you can't execute those ideas unless you have the right financial resources. And so the key is being able to match the two together and identify trends that others may be unwilling or unable to recognize.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that's super meaningful and impactful. And, we're running up on the 10 minutes, but are there any parting words or comments from you?
I think that for me, what my work has taught me as an investor and my volunteering has taught me from working with diverse founders is that there are just so many more options than young people these days really think about. I think people become so career oriented so early and so quickly that they don't like to take risks and they don't like to kind of go off the beaten path. And it's something that I wish that I had known earlier. And now I'm so happy that I do. And I'm just hoping that the work that I do will help other diverse founders, other diverse young people find their voice sooner and find their passions.
Absolutely. And I look forward to following that journey. So thank you so much, Megan, for sharing your stories and your insights.
Thank you.
And thanks so much to Grace and Tide for hosting us today. Really enjoyed it and look forward to connecting again soon. Thanks, Megan.
Absolutely.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.